there, tumbleweeds. I am here at the RV park that is my base camp, and I'm just goofing around, painting a little scene, just making it up in my mind. But while I'm doing this, I just thought I would tell you about the camping options that I have and when I will choose one over the other. My main goal is to not pay for camping, but that's not always possible. So I thought I would make a list of the typical options, and here they are in no particular order. So option one is private RV parks like KOA. I do not like to pay for camping, as I just mentioned, and you probably know if you've been watching my videos. So I rarely stay at RV parks, other than Thousand Trails, and I'll get to that one later. I have stayed, as far as I can remember, I have stayed at private campgrounds 4 times since I've been traveling, and I've been on the road since November 2023. I stayed at a couple of KOAs and an RV park in Tehachapi, California, which it's not, that one is not very expensive. I think it was $45 a night, and I stayed there twice, once on the way out to California and once on the way back. And I would probably stay there again because it was a really nice campground. But I would probably never stay more than 1 night at a time at a regular RV park, because wherever I'm going, there's usually other options. Number 2 is a Harvest Host or Hipcamp. A Harvest Host is where people that own businesses, such as farms like an alpaca farm, or a farm that grows vegetables or fruits or whatever. Or it could be a business like a gift shop, or it could be a tourist center. They allow you to stay the night on their property, and they do not charge you to stay overnight. However, Harvest Hosts recommends, or they encourage you to spend at least $30 to patronize the business in thanks for allowing them to stay overnight. So I think that's fair enough, and I have stayed at several Harvest Hosts, and I always try to spend at least the $30. The Hipcamp is different. You make a reservation and you pay for the spot when you make the reservation, and they're anywhere from like $20 to $65 a night, depending on where it is. And they're not campgrounds typically. I think there possibly could be some other campgrounds, but most of them are just on people's property. And so I think I've only stayed at 2 Hipcamps, and I think both of them were $20 a night. And I stayed a couple of nights at one in Winslow, Arizona, and 1 night at one in Cedar Crest, New Mexico, which is just outside of Albuquerque. So they're very convenient if you're traveling, like from one destination to the next. It gives you a place to stop overnight to rest up, so you can continue driving the next day. And when I was going to Florida, I stayed at Harvest Host. I stayed at 1 Hipcamp, and I stayed at Harvest Host all along the route on I-40. And then on the way back, I stayed, some of the ones I stayed at the same one again on the way back. So they're very convenient, and most of the time you can make a reservation for the same day. It's not guaranteed. I have asked requests to stay before and not heard from the person or from the business for 2 or 3 days before they approved it, and sometimes they never answer you at all. I've only encountered that a couple of times. Most of the time, if they can't accommodate you, they will tell you right away that they can't accommodate you, so you can make other plans. But that does come in very handy. Harvest hosts and Hipcamps do come in handy when you're not wanting to stay at a rest area or a Cracker Barrel or, you know, a truck stop or whatever. So that was number 2. Number 3 is Thousand Trails RV Parks. I have a Journey membership with Thousand Trails, which includes the Trails collection that allows me to stay at Thousand Trails RV Parks for up to 3 weeks, depending on the season. Some very popular parks will limit you to 2 weeks if it's during the peak season for them. Encore Parks, and you can go back to back from Thousand Trails to another Thousand Trails park without having to stay away. Encore Parks only allow you to stay 2 weeks at a time, and after that 2 weeks you can't go to another Encore Park for a week. You have to go stay outside of the network for a week before you can make another reservation for an Encore Park. Now you can go from Encore Park to Thousand Trails Parks back to back, or Thousand Trails Park to Encore Park back to back, or Thousand Trails to Thousand Trails Parks back to back. So that comes in very helpful if you're traveling in an area where there are a lot of Thousand Trails Parks, and Arizona has a lot, and well, they have a lot of Encore Parks, and California has a lot of Thousand Trails Parks, and they also have Encore Parks. However, I haven't stayed in an Encore Park in California yet, but the ones that are on the ocean are, I believe, are all Encore Parks. So you do have to pay for the membership. I think I paid $700 down for a 4-year membership, and I pay $127 a month for the membership, but I don't have to pay anything to stay at a park, and I can make reservations at parks, at Thousand Trails Parks, up to 4 months ahead of time, and for Encore Parks I can make them up to 60 days ahead of time. It's 120 days, not 4 months, because it does. I've been caught by that before. One day can make a big difference. But I stayed at some Thousand Trails Parks in South Carolina when I was on my way to Florida, and I stayed at Thousand Trails Park in Florida. And there are quite a few in Florida. There's only like 3,000 Trails Parks in Florida, but there's a lot of Encore Parks in Florida. But I'm telling you, I had a very hard time getting reservations at some of the Encore Parks because Florida is a very popular destination in late fall and winter. So just keep that in mind. So I stayed, some of the perks of staying at a Thousand Trails Park is that you have access to showers, restrooms and showers, and they all the ones I've been to have laundry rooms, and all the ones of the laundry rooms I've been to either use an app or a card for you to pay for the laundry, so you don't have to lug around a bunch of quarters with you, and I really appreciated that. They also, most of them have full hookups. All of the Encore Parks have full hookups that I have been to. Some of the Thousand Trails Parks are limited to electric and water, and so you have to take your RV to the dump station to dump your tanks, black water and gray water tanks, I don't have a black water tank anymore. I still have one, but I don't use it. So, so that's kind of a nice feature, not having to, you know, run your generator to keep your electricity going. I do have solar panels, but I still have to run my generator when I'm not hooked up. So last winter I bounced between Encore Parks in Yuma and Thousand Trails in Palm Springs. And last spring I spent 7 weeks traveling around northern and central California, and I stayed at Thousand Trails Parks back to back there. I may have had a day in between where I stayed at a Harvest Host, but most of the time I was pretty lucky to be able to get back-to-back reservations. And I have to say that I prefer the Encore Parks better than the Thousand Trails. The Thousand Trails Parks are more like camping, and whereas the Encore Parks are like glamping. Now, I like both, but the conveniences of glamping are obviously better than camping. So, that was number 3. Number 4 is BLM land or NFS land. BLM is Bureau of Land Management. NFS is National Forest Service, which means boondocking or dry camping. There typically are no hookups at these types of places, and they're not even really campgrounds. NFS has some official campgrounds, and they might have a fire ring and a picnic table, but most of them don't have anything. So it's basically you just pull up into a spot that you like and set up your camp there. So BLM and NFS land are probably the prettiest ways to camp because you're surrounded by nature and you can see mountains or rivers or lakes or whatever from your campsite rather than having to hike to see something beautiful or drive somewhere to see something beautiful. But I only have a 24-gallon water tank. So if I conserve water when I wash dishes and don't take showers, I take a washcloth bath and don't wash my hair, I can stay out for about 7 days before my water will run out. So that is about as long as I can boondock without having access to water. So my particular RV has 300 watts of solar panels on the roof. It has 3 100-watt panels, and I have 2 100-amp lithium batteries. They typically would last throughout the day. Well, in the summertime they usually do last throughout the day. However, I consume a lot of electricity in my van because I use Starlink all day long, and I'm on the computer a lot during the day, either working on videos or streaming YouTube or streaming movies or whatever. And then I also have an induction cooktop, which uses a lot of power. And I have a microwave. I try not to use the microwave when I'm boondocking, but since I do have a battery, a generator that I can use to recharge my batteries, I will use the microwave if I need to for some reason. So my generators, even though, even in the summer, I do still have to run my generator to charge the batteries back up, usually twice a day. And if it's hot out, and hot for me, it means if it's 70 degrees or warmer, the sun is going to warm up my van pretty quick because it's like a tin can. So I will have to run my generator in order to run the air conditioner. The air conditioner will not run off battery power. So when I have to run the generator to run the air conditioner, that usually will limit me to only 4 days because it uses a lot of LP gas and propane. So I can stay about 4 days, and then I'll have to go find some place to refill my propane tank. Now I can usually go back to the same spot again as long as no one else has taken that spot, but most of the time I just find someplace else to go just because I want to see someplace new. If I want to stay longer than any of those days, I do need to make sure that there's a place to fill up water, get propane, do laundry, and find a place that has a dump station to dump my tanks that are not too far away. So in order to find these places where I can do all these things, fill water tanks, dump tanks, get propane and do laundry, I use either the Overlander app and filter on whatever thing it is that I want to find, and it'll show you all the places that offer that service. Or I use Google sometimes, and sometimes that will work as well. So when I first started doing the RV life or van life, whatever you want to call it, I came to Quartzsite, Arizona, and I stayed in the desert for about 3 months with one stay at a Encore Park in Yuma, and then I also went to Palm Springs. But I enjoyed staying staying out in the desert because every sunrise was beautiful. Maybe not every sunrise, but most sunrises were beautiful. Sunsets were sometimes good and sometimes just kind of eh. But the sunrises were always beautiful where I stayed at Dome Rock. And I also stayed at the LTVA area at La Posa South, which you have to pay to stay there, but it's not expensive. And they have access to trash, water, a dump station, and pit toilets. Was that it? And that's it. Yeah. Number 5 is National Park campgrounds. And I hate to say this, but that is my least favorite way to camp. And it's typically national parks do not have cell phone service, and the campgrounds have no hookups, but you still have to pay to camp there. Some have fire rings and some have picnic tables. I think actually probably all of them have picnic tables and fire rings, but at least the ones I've stayed at. But having Starlink is pretty much a must if you're someone like me that needs internet access or needs to be able to use the telephone. I set my phone up to use Wi-Fi calling, so even if there's no cell phone service, I can call somebody if I need to. So getting reservations at national parks is sometimes difficult if you're trying to stay at one during the popular season. I can typically find a reservation for like one night or maybe 2 nights in a row. But if you want to do any more than that, you got to make the reservations pretty far ahead of time. So when I want to go to a national park and camp, I can usually find BLM land or National Forest Service land that's near the park, so that I don't have to pay for parking. And I will typically have cell phone service, not always, but a lot of the time. So number 6 is state parks. Now, I love the state of Arizona and I love the state of New Mexico. So I have stayed at state parks in both of those states. When I first started family back in 2023, it was it was still 2023. Yeah, that's when I first started. I bought a out-of-state annual permit for camping, which back then in December of 2023 cost $225 for the year, and it allows you to stay in primitive and developed campsites that might not have hookups for free. Campsites that were developed that have water and electricity were $4 a night. So you would have to stay 22 nights at a state park in order to break even for paying the $225 for the annual camping pass. Since then, New Mexico has raised the rates. The out-of-state annual camping permit is now $600 a year, but you still get the same benefits. So $4 would be the most you'd ever have to pay per night at a campground that had electricity and water. I don't think, there may be some state parks that have sewer hookups, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. So you would still have to go dump your tanks at the dump station, which they all will have a dump station, at least one dump station. But since they raised the rate to $600, that made the break-even point increase to 40 nights. So it is not worth it to me, given that I can stay many other places in Arizona and California for free. I haven't stayed in any California state parks, so I can't comment on that. But I have stayed at Arizona state parks, and when I first started traveling, I think it was like $35 a night on average, and you could have electric and water, and sometimes would have sewer hookups. But the rates increased last year, so now it's $50 a night. So I recently went to Buckskin Mountain State Park, and I had electric and water hookups, and it was $50 a night. So it is kind of a nice little getaway if you've been boondocking for a long time, or if you've been staying in an RV park that's not in a pretty place. It's worth it for a little getaway. I've stayed at Full Hollow State Park for 6 nights last summer in between my Encore Park stays, and So that was $350 that it cost me. And the other 2 weeks at Encore Park cost me nothing other than my membership fee. So it's, you just have to decide whether it's worth it or not. Number 7 is permanent or seasonal RV parks. This year, I decided to get an annual site at an RV park in Quartzsite, Arizona. The reason for doing this is so I could become an Arizona resident. I've been using my daughter's address in Jacksonville, Florida for the last 2 years, which is kind of a problem for my Medicare. So my primary care provider had to be in Jacksonville, Florida. So whenever I did have to go see a doctor, or dentist, I had to pay out of pocket, which could get very expensive. Luckily, I've been pretty healthy. Also, the future of voting by mail is kind of uncertain, and I wanted to not have to go back to Florida to vote. So that's another reason that I decided to become an Arizona resident, because I really do not like Florida. No offense, but it's just too humid for me. And I think the Southwest is much prettier. And I love the dry air. And the sun. It doesn't rain very often in the desert. And when it does, it's really beautiful. So I don't stay, I got this site for a year, and it was very inexpensive. It was about it was not about, it was $2,200 for the year, which comes out to around $180 a month. I have to pay for electricity, which even in the winter here, I have to run my air conditioner in the afternoon because the way that my van is parked, the sun hits it on the passenger side where all the windows are, so it gets pretty warm in there even if it's not hot outside. And so that's been running about between $30 and $35 a month for the electricity. But I won't stay here all year because it gets way too hot. It gets up in 110, 115 degrees. So I will just leave my site sitting here, and it'll be here for me when I come back in the fall. But it just being that it allows me to be an Arizona resident is totally worth it for me. And also, another good thing about it is I don't have to stay here in the park. I could still go boondock in the desert. I could go to Dome Rock. I could go to Palm Canyon at Kofa Wilderness Wildlife Refuge. I can go to Yuma and stay in a Thousand Trails Park. I can go to Palm Springs and stay in a Thousand Trails Park. And I can go to state parks that are nearby, like Buckskin Mountain, Cattail Cove. There are several state parks in between Quartzsite and, in between Parker, Arizona, and Lake Havasu. So it's kind of a win-win situation. So another reason that I wanted to get this home base is that there is a laundromat here, so I don't have to drive to the laundromat every week or so to do my laundry. I can tote it over in my little canvas wagon that I got at Walmart, and it does require quarters though, so I still have to stock up on quarters. But they also have restrooms here with showers, although I recently removed the sink out of my bathroom, and so that it gave me a whole lot more space to take a shower in there. So I've been taking a shower in my van lately. It changed my tune when I first started doing the RV life or van life. I all I wanted to do was boondock. I wanted to be totally free. But the wear and tear on the generator was a concern, and having to do maintenance more often was a concern. So I still am able to do that occasionally, but staying at RV parks or campgrounds that have electric hookups, at minimum, that's what I would need, was electric hookup, has made life a lot easier. So I hope this list was helpful for you, and I hope you get out there and enjoy whatever method of camping suits you. Thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe if you like this video. It really helps support my channel. Thank you. Bye.
From Navajo lands to Arizona's glow, a life of freedom where wild spirits flow. Each sunset a story, each dawn a new start, a journey of soul, a wandering art. Like a tumbleweed, like a tumbleweed, she goes where